I'll be diving into spoilers for the third Conjuring film, so if you have not yet seen it, go check it out on HBO Max, or if you're feeling bold, go check it out in theaters. So The Conjuring 3, or The Devil Made Me Do It, is out now. I didn't love it, but I was kind of expecting that. Without James Wan's involvement, I had a feeling that I'd be really disappointed by this movie, and I would just kind of forget about it over time and just sort of move on. But for whatever reason, I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about why I didn't love it, and why I even kind of didn't hate it either. So I figured it's about time that I do another video in this sort of format and talk about my thoughts and sort of try to pinpoint exactly why I feel this way. So yeah, this isn't your typical Mayhem Zone clip out. I'm sure in the coming weeks we will talk about this movie in more of a review format with Will and I whenever we get around to doing that. As far as a broad review goes, I didn't despise this movie, which was very shocking to me because I was really expecting to. But I didn't really think it added all that much. I think it felt more in line with some of the spin-off movies. And I'm going to dive into a few reasons why I feel this way. So without further ado, here we go. As you already know, James Wan didn't return for this film. Instead, director Michael Chaves stepped in, and I don't know why they let him do this, because he directed arguably the worst film in the Conjuring universe, The Curse of La Llorona, and I know there's some debate as to whether or not that's actually a part of the universe, because it sort of stands on its own, and it is kind of its own story, and there are very little tie-ins to it, but there are enough tie-ins to give us a hint that it is connected. I remember vividly an Annabelle mention, and a pretty elaborate tie-in with the beginning of Annabelle Comes Home, if I'm remembering that correctly. I only saw the movie once because it was so bad. By losing James Wan, you lose the elegance and prestige of The Conjuring and what made this kind of the household flagship franchise for this universe. I love those first two Conjuring films because James Wan knows how to scare you, knows how to bring that stuff home with you from the theater. I remember being very scared of that first Conjuring movie. That was like my first horror movie in theaters, I believe. And then the second one scared me even more somehow, and I was terrified to walk down hallways. I was scared to look in closets. That's the kind of effect that James Wan had on me with his films overall, honestly. I noticed with this film, Chaves seems to go more for the effect rather than the scare. He seems more worried about, oh, look at this kid contorting, isn't that creepy? Or, oh, look how Lorraine touched the ground and it turned from day to night, wasn't that a cool effect? It just didn't scare me, and I don't really know where he was going with some of these decisions. And now don't get me wrong, that stuff is cool when it's in the movie, but it's not scary, and more importantly, it's not very subtle. Wan knows how to put you in the world and make you feel connected to all the characters, which leads me to my next point. I want you to think back to those first two movies again. Think about how we felt about those characters. The mother in the first film is getting bruises at night and cannot sleep, and ultimately gets possessed and tries to murder all of her daughters. That's terrifying. We see that day at the beach in the first movie, and it makes us want Ed and Lorraine to bring this family back to that. That's what we want for this family. In The Conjuring 2, there's a similar setup. Janet and Billy are being terrorized by this trio of demons, and it's gotten so bad that Janet can't sleep, Janet doesn't have any friends at school, and nobody wants to talk to her. And in that movie, half the world thinks Janet is making all of this shit up anyway. And throughout both of these films, James Wan and the Hayes brothers build up Ed and Lorraine's relationship to the point where we care a lot about them too, and we want them to help these people. And thanks to the groundwork that was done by James Wan and the writers of those first two movies, they are literally the only characters in The Devil Made Me Do It that have any sort of weight to them. Sure, I didn't want Arnie to go to death row, and I didn't want David to get tormented by demons or witches or whatever it was. But unlike the first two films, I didn't connect with these characters at all. The work wasn't done to make me care about these people. It wasn't even a family this time around. We're supposed to be invested in some girl's boyfriend. An alternate route this movie could have taken to make us maybe care more about these characters is to focus on Debbie. Maybe Debbie should be the focal point here because she's dealing with her boyfriend getting possessed and her brother in the beginning being possessed. She's watching her boyfriend be moved around like a voodoo doll, And that's gotta be traumatizing for her, so I don't know why we didn't really get much with Debbie in this film. The only investment we have in this film is with Ed and Lorraine Warren. We don't want Ed to leave his pills at home, and we don't want him to run too fast because he had a heart attack in the beginning of the film. I thought that stuff was really great, and it had them working at a disadvantage throughout the film, which was much needed tension. Most of that work was done, unfortunately, in the previous two films, and this film does basically nothing to further develop that aside from the gazebo bits and the heart attack. And the only reason we care so much about them is because of those quiet moments in the first two films. Look at The Conjuring 2, where we stop for 5 minutes to let Ed sing Elvis, and to have each of them describe their story of how they met each other. That was all great stuff. And I think the only reason I did care about Arnie and David at least a little bit is because these were real people in real life. This is based on a true story. Who knows how much of this is true, but we're invested automatically, at least a little bit, because, oh, this is a real story. This is really scary because it really happened. But if you lose that, if you lose the previous two films, I really think this movie would have been a generic horror movie. Horror movies are at their best when they're simple. James Wan made two very simple but very effective haunted house movies. This film goes off the deep end with this witch totem story and raises more questions than answers, in my opinion. Why was this family even targeted in the first place? The first two films made it very clear as to why this happened. It was all by chance. These unfortunate family members just walked into the wrong home. Sure, maybe the witch totem was left there, but were they being targeted? Was it just also a coincidence? The movie doesn't answer any of that. It's all needlessly complicated and didn't really need to be that way. It's possible that I've missed something because I am an idiot, but I don't think I did. The creepy lady witch character in this movie is also so uninteresting and not scary in the slightest. The first two films had Bill Wilkins, the Nun, Annabelle, Bathsheba, the Crooked Man. Some of these characters have inspired spin-offs, and in one of them has a fucking trilogy. The creepy lady in this movie wasn't creepy, and I don't care to see any more adventures with her. I don't even remember her name because I didn't bother looking it up because I didn't care about her. Show me the demon in the waterbed. What's his story? This last one is mostly a joke, of course. But I have this weird pet peeve with this trilogy now, where the first Conjuring is called The Conjuring, the second one's called The Conjuring 2, and now the third one is called The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Why didn't you just call it The Conjuring 3? Because also, The Devil Made Me Do It is a shitty title. Sorry. Calling it The Devil Made Me Do It as opposed to The Conjuring 3 makes it feel separate from those other two movies and makes it sound like a spin-off, quite frankly. I can't even really think of any other franchises that have done this. The closest thing I could think is going from like an R rating to a PG-13 rating with like something like The Expendables did, and it just feels like the odd one out. The Devil Made Me Do It feels like the odd one out. That's kind of the perfect way to sum all this up. So there you have it. That's why I feel The Devil Made Me Do It didn't really work as the third Conjuring movie. It wasn't nearly as bad as I was expecting it to be, but seeing the drop in quality like this, especially if it's the final film, is very disappointing. I'd watch it on HBO Max for sure. If you really want to go to the theaters and you've already seen A Quiet Place Part 2, then maybe go to like a Tuesday discount showing of this. I don't think it's worth like the full price on a Friday evening or something. Not worth it. But let me know what you thought of the film in the comments below, and if you think that this movie didn't work for any other reasons, share them. I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to engage in conversation with you guys. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for a lot more content this summer, starting with a trilogy of films coming from myself, Will, and Devin. We finished mine just recently, and we're getting started on Will soon. The idea behind this creative experiment, I guess you could say, is to have each of us produce a script, get a cast together, find a location, and make a movie. That's really all there is to it, and we're trying our best to get everything done in a timely manner so that we can release it to you guys. My film is called Inevitable, and it is done. Will's film is called The Journey, and we will start filming it next week, I believe. And Devin's film is called God Lives on My Block, and that'll be happening very shortly after Will's. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.